In this video, I'm going to show you in great detail how I installed this diesel heater in our latest Overland vehicle build. And along the way, I'll point out some custom details and share a few safety tips. Now I know that this isn't the typical Overland build, but what I cover in this video will easily apply to whatever you need heated: vans, campers, trailers, whatever you've got. Now I think I know what many of you are thinking right now is, why doesn't he just use the heater that comes with the car? In our case, we've converted our VW Beetle over to a Baja Bug with a modified engine, so that provision isn't available to us anymore. I started out with a complete heater unit like this, and this is a self-contained unit. Basically, all you have to do is hook it up to a power source, a 12 volt. Has the diesel tank in here, has the furnace itself, all the electronics, control pad, all that's included. Then I took it apart. I chose a 5K model primarily because of the distance our heat is going to have to travel into our compartment. Because the inside of a Volkswagen Beetle is relatively small, we all know that, a 3K probably would have worked fine if the heat didn't take such a long, twisty path like it is in our case. If it was just to dump right into the cabin, 3K probably would have worked. In the very near future, we're going to be moving all of our Volkswagen content over to our new YouTube channel, Fun with V-Dubs. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video and down in the video description. We found that the best place to mount our heater is way up front here. I started out by making this mount that mounts the heater itself. It's just out of some simple aluminum stock that I got at the big box store, bolted together and then bolted to the body itself. The heater itself is secured to the bracket using these stainless steel worm clamps or hose clamps. These are going to make it relatively easy to get the heater in and out. The fuel tank is mounted in a similar fashion, using the same type of clamps. Right up by the tank where the fuel line comes out, we have an inline fuel filter. Now, I'm not a huge fan of these cheap plastic ones, but they do come in handy because they're clear. You can actually see if there's fuel flowing through the line. However, they do get brittle with age, so change it out periodically and keep an eye on it. The last thing you want is this end to come off where the hose goes in. It'll snap off and it'll get fuel everywhere. This is the type of fuel line that normally comes with these heaters, and as you can, well, maybe you can't see, but I'm going to tell you, it's not rubber, it's plastic. So this too, just like that plastic fuel filter, will get brittle as it ages. So I never use this. I just don't trust it. So what I always do is just go to the auto parts store and get some fuel rated rubber hose. And all of our fuel line connections are held in place with proper hose clamps, not those little springy things. For a little extra insurance, I put a piece of plastic electrical conduit on the fuel line where it comes really close down here to the hot exhaust pipe. That'll keep a lot of the heat off the line. The pump is angled up slightly towards the heater. That will eliminate air bubbles forming. The ground goes to just a bolt on the body. The positive goes to our fuse box. Now this has to be protected with a fuse, and the size fuse you need is going to depend on which heater you have. I've seen a lot of these heaters, and the only time you need any kind of higher ampage is right at startup when the glow plug is firing the diesel for the first time. And I've seen them operate with like 8 amps up to 13 amps. It's all going to depend on your heater. These heaters I get from Vevor, I think that's how they pronounce it. They typically fire off at around 12 amps or so, so we have a 15 amp fuse protecting it. Then after the heater gets going, it only uses like maybe 2-3 amps to operate. Now there's one part of the wiring harness that goes to the pump and another that goes to the controller. None of these connectors are very weather tight. So what I do is I take a little bit of dielectric grease and put it where the two halves of the connector connect together. That seals it there. And where the wires come in at the ends, I take some black RTV silicone and plug them off better, so no moisture can get in that way. The harness going into the controller inside on the dash wasn't long enough, so I did have to splice wires to extend it. And this is where we mounted our controller, using the same little mounting clip that came with the heater enclosure. Right next to it, we have a master switch that turns on the power to the heater, and then the display comes up. We put this master switch in so that we wouldn't have power going to the heater all the time, like when it's parked or during the summer when we don't use a heater. Now, if you put a switch like this in yours, keep in mind you must never ever shut the heater down using this master switch. You have to use the controller. The heater goes through a specific shutdown mode where it'll shut the burner off, but it's still hot. So that fan has to keep blowing across the combustion chamber to cool it off. Otherwise, sitting in that plastic enclosure too hot, it'll go into thermal meltdown. So please just always use your controller to shut the heater down. Then come back in 5, 10, 15 minutes. Then you can shut the master switch off. The exhaust pipe coming out of the combustion chamber gets hot, very hot. So in your application, make certain that you don't have that anywhere near anything that's combustible. To keep the heat down underneath our hood, I double wrapped it with this exhaust wrap. Now, although it looks like it because I used a exhaust pipe for it, this is actually the cold air intake to the combustion chamber. I extended it down and out of the underhood enclosure to truly get fresh air. You see, this is a 1960 Beetle where the gasoline tank vents out of the cap that's under the hood. So there is a chance of having somewhat of a concentration of gasoline fumes underneath the hood, and gasoline fumes tend to settle down, and with the air intake down here, there was a risk of getting some of those gasoline fumes into the intake to the combustion chamber, and if it made its way in here, that could be catastrophic. I put my intake down here in the fender well, kind of down here by the steering box, so there's no chance of gasoline fumes getting in it. When I get the body all done and the hood on, I'll just secure this up in here with some zip ties. And also in this filler, they don't give you any kind of real filtration for that air going into the combustion chamber. So what I did is I cut up one of those foam air cleaners that you get for a lawnmower engine and stuffed that in here, and that's going to work perfect. And now on to the heated air part of the system, which is kept completely separate from the combustion side of this heater, as you can see in the short video clip from a previous video that we produced.
Right, but where does the air come from that's going into the tent?
That comes from this end. So here, and this is a fan that your power supply is going to be spinning, and that's going to force the air through it, along here, and along all these fins that are super hot from that diesel burning inside. And then it comes out, see, then it would come out this end and through a tube to your tent. On the cold air side, air is sucked in from the cabin through a swivel and a 90 into a 3-inch hose. This is more efficient than sucking the much colder air from outside. In past installations of these heaters, I've often used this much cheaper dryer vent tube. This is the only type of hose I use now. It's flexible and it extends out, but it doesn't have the deep accordion segments in it, so it's still a good 3-inch ID, and it's really tough. You're not going to poke holes in this very easy. Cold air comes in to the heater past all those fins that are on the combustion chamber, comes out this side, nice and hot. That 3-inch output hose then goes into a 4-way splitter where we have 4 1.5-inch tubes connected to it. On each side we have a hose going to the defroster tube and a hose going down to the original stock heater channel. Now my system didn't work as well as I'd hoped at first. The heat took the path of least resistance, meaning most of it went to the defroster vents up by the windshields. So to get some heat down at the floor, or more heat down at the floor, I made little butterfly valves that I installed in the 4-way connector. Now I can adjust these to regulate the airflow to get more heat down into those heater channels at the floor. This system works fantastic, especially in temperatures, 40 degrees Fahrenheit and above. In lower temps than that, it struggles a little bit. I think what would really help is if I put some tiny 12-volt fans down at the heater channels inside behind the front seats to kind of suck air up through the heater channels a little bit. That's next on the list. Well, there you have it. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please hit that like button, and I hope you consider subscribing to our channel. Thanks for watching.